question, but the further that Gimson and Burnet leg out at the front of the pack is just speaks danger for the Australians. What you were mentioning with the smaller race course, how critical those ley lines and turning points are.
Yeah, but on the first downwind they just showed real good pace. And so there is your world champion for 2020 here in Geelong. It is the GBR combination of John Gimson and Anna Burnet.
Going into the final race of the 2020 Nacra 17 World Championships, the British team had it all to do. Hi, my name's Andy Rice, and joining me on the line to talk about that dramatic day in Geelong are John Gimson and Anna Burnet. So, hi guys, you've had a few months to get used to being called the world champions. So what does it feel like? I'll start with you, Anna.
I don't really feel like a world champion. It's a weird thing from what you think. But yeah, still very proud of that and happy that we were able to get it done.
And what about you, John? Because tell us when you set out on the Olympic trail, how long you've been chasing a world title in an Olympic class, and what does it feel like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I really set out kind of after youth sailing in 2002, but I wouldn't say I properly campaigned until after the star sailing in 2012. But yeah, it's been nearly a 20-year journey, so it's been quite good to let myself know I could actually do it. I always thought I could, but it's been good to prove the point. Well,
20 years and you're still looking as fresh as a daisy. I don't know how you do it.
Still got it.
Must be good sun factor stuff that you use. So, Anna, going into the final day, when you woke up that morning in Geelong, how many races were on the cards? What were you thinking? What did you need to do?
I think there were 3 races to go that day before the medal race. Is that right? Yeah. I can't really remember that well.
3 plus a medal race. Wow, that is full on.
I think we did 2, but we ended up doing 2 on the medal.
Yeah, we knew it was still we knew it was going to be a big day, and it always is those class European and World Championships where we do 2 or 3 races on the final day and then a medal race. So you know it's going to be a really long day, and that there's still so much that can change in the overall scores with a couple of fleet races.
John, do you remember where you were in the results going into the final day?
I think we were second going into the final day.
Okay. And then tell us about the build up to the medal race. How did those final few finals races go? I understand there was a little bit of drama on the
yes, we kind of normally meet every morning with, we had Ian personally coaching us and set out a plan for the day, and really it was a shifty offshore that day, so we were kind of just trying to get counters because we knew it'd be quite easy to pick up big scores. And the first race we did that. I can't quite remember what we got, maybe a 7, something like that, steady top 10. And then the last race we had decided to start on port because the breeze was quite far left, and we were lining up to go, and with about 20 seconds to go, the tiller extension ripped off the end of the UJ. So it's like,
it wasn't operator error, it was gear failure, was it?
Failure, yeah. And earlier in the week we'd had a capsize in another race we were going well in, so we had to count, whatever we got in that race we had to count to still be in a shot with the medals.
Okay.
So I was like, pass the tape.
Whoa. Okay. So pass the tape it back on as best you can.
Yeah, so we decided we'd miss the start, but we'd spend 30 seconds doing a good taping job, which lasted for the first beat. And then halfway down the first run, we kind of managed to catch up to maybe 15th up the beat. And we'd started, dead last by a long way, but stuck to our plan and went right. And a lot of guys had started on starboard and on left. So we managed to kind of get back to a mid-fleeters position by the top.
Wow. And
then halfway down the first run, the tiller ripped off the UJ again. So I ended up sitting in downwind, holding the tiller and the tiller bar. And we got around the leeward marks and hadn't lost too much. And we then spent another 30 seconds trying to retape the tiller onto the UJ. And we just couldn't get it to work. So then we were like, right, put the tiller on the trampoline, and we're just going to hike out for the rest of the race and make sure we're on the lifted tack, which we did, and just about scraped enough to, you know, still be on equal points with Jason going into the medal race.
Oh, ouch.
A lot more stressful than we planned for.
Oh, absolutely. And you learned a new way of sailing the Nacra 17.
Yeah.
So what was the boat speed, Anna, sailing the boat that way compared with typical boat speed?
I don't know. I mean, we were probably a knot slower. It wasn't actually that bad. John did a really good job of hiking. Back to his star days, I think he took that on. And then, to be honest, like, I just put my head down and tried to keep the boat going. Obviously, it didn't feel great, but at least John could keep looking around while he was hiking, and yeah, he kept us on the lifted tack. And I couldn't believe it. We just kept crossing back with people who'd been, you know, sailing a header, and then we'd come back just going slower but on a lift and come back equal. So yeah, made it work. It was kind of unbelievable, to be honest.
Amazing.
Best race we've ever sailed.
Yeah.
Even we held it on the downwind as well, just driving, you know, we just put everything into tactics, and I think we sailed pretty smart, so managed to just about to cling on to something half enough respectable to put us in the mix.
Right, incredible to be able to shift focus like that and keep it going. Now, let me just take you into the medal race. So what were you thinking? What was the plan going into the medal race itself?
So we were tied, weren't we?
We were tied with Jason and Lisa. Nathan had managed to get quite a lot of points on us, so that was kind of it seemed quite far fetched, and we could still be beaten by the French, who were in fourth.
Okay.
So our plan was to try and be ahead of Jason and Lisa and make sure the French we were keeping an eye on them.
So you've got 45 seconds to go here as we look at it. So you've got the French breathing down your necks. You need to get the Australians. So are you thinking in terms of attack or defend, or both?
I think we kind of sat down before we went out and talked about it a lot, and and a bit about what we should do. And I think with about 5 minutes before the start, we said, if the breeze had got up a bit, and we're quite quick in that condition, so we're like, right, let's try and win the race, and if we're in front of the other two, happy to go the same way as them.
Okay, and now you've got 10 seconds to go. Everyone's quite far back from the line. Just tell us why that might be. I'm sure there's some obvious reasons, but just explain them to us.
Just so you can hit the line at speed, and I think if in the Nacra you can easily get to the line early and be stopped, which in a big fleet's fine, but in a small fleet, the whole fleet, you know, if you sit there parked, the other 10 boats the space for them to come up and swamp you either side. Yeah.
So actually there were a couple of boats that hit the line quite well. Your start was pretty good, but very good starts by the Kiwis and by the Finns, who we see here in pictures. So Anna, how do you rate your start in terms of where you wanted to be strategically on the course?
I think strategically it was the right start, and we're not very good at starting, so for us that was a good one. And actually the Australians had been playing games with each other in the pre-start, so we kind of took advantage of that and just put focus on getting off the line well.
And what did it feel like to actually have a working tiller extension again, John? That must have felt like a luxury.
Wheels. I'm pretty happy for it.
Now, who are we looking at here? Is that the Outridges?
That's the Outridges.
Yeah.
Okay. So they are one of your arch rivals for the world title, but they've got a lot more to think about because they're thinking about selection for Australia against the silver medalists from Rio, Jason Waterhouse and Lisa Darmanin. So, Anna, how much was that playing into your hands, the fact that the Australians were so focused on each other?
I think we knew that would probably be the case, which has obviously played into our hands nicely. But also I think we really felt for them, because having been in the same situation with such a tight trials, when it comes down to a medal race like that, it's really tough.
Yeah, it is. It's massively high pressure, and as you say, tight medal races, both for the two Australians here, who we see in picture. I mean, we're talking about, in the end, it was Waterhouse and Darmanin that won that trial. So it's Nathan Outridge, a gold and a silver medalist, not going to the games, just as Tom Burton, reigning Olympic and world champion in the laser, when he was not selected to go, but Matt weren't going. So some very tough selection battles in Australia, and you two know all about that, having only just beaten Ben Saxton and Nicky Boniface. So anyway, whilst we're looking at these two, what are your thoughts as you go tearing away up the track, John?
So we sort of Aussies were match racing kind of pre-start, and they basically both started on our transom. And then that made me feel a bit more like we should focus on the French, because Jason and Lise had quite a lot on with Nathan, and they were both quite late for the start. So it kind of played into our hands perfectly. We started on starboard towards the boat, and then it was again shifty offshore in Geelong, and we've just got onto the lifted tack as soon as we could. So I think we started on mean numbers and then flipped over onto port and had to sail quite a long lift across on the port tack after about 30 seconds after the start.
And meanwhile, Kurt Bay and Keskinen, who got a great start off the pin end, they're now looking to cross you and the Spanish and the Italians on port tack. And will the Finns be able to do that? Oh no, they're just tacking back now anyway. So you're in a speed battle with the Spanish to windward of you and the Italians to leeward. Anna, do you remember that particular part of the race, and how were you doing against the other teams around you?
I can't remember exactly that bit. I just remember seeing the French foiling. They started on port and they foiled right out to the right hand side and then came back foiling in. So we were quite aware that they were, that they were going pretty quick. So we just had to stay on the lifted tack a bit better than they were doing. So it's quite hard on the foils to always go on the lifted tack.
And as you talk about the French, they do go to the top of our leaderboard here. Now, this idea of foiling upwind, it seems like it's still creeping its way into the fleet. Is it one of the things that we will see develop more going in towards the Marseille games, do you think, for 2024?
Yeah, I think Marseille as a venue suits it more, so people push it harder. Tokyo obviously is generally quite a wavy venue, and it doesn't work in sea state. But Geelong here was a perfect venue to be doing it. So yeah, I think we will see more and more of it into that cycle. And
you should have had your European Championships in Lake Garda. We probably would have seen quite a bit of that this year, wouldn't we, if those Europeans had gone ahead. But as you say, the big waves of Enoshima, maybe we're not going to see so much of the upwind foiling. Now, you are up towards your sort of middle left at the moment. Anna, how comfortable are you feeling about the race at this stage?
I think John, I was, to be honest, I was pretty head down this whole race, just trying to keep the boat going quickly. And John was pretty head out, calling the tactics, which is kind of how we sail in shifty offshore conditions. So yeah, I think John would have to talk more about. I was just keeping an eye on the French and remember thinking that we were kind of okay with them, and the Aussies were behind us, so I think we're reasonably comfortable. But yeah, I was head down.
So you're on quite a nice lift there at the moment. The French are on the far side, and it looks like they've just tacked below the ley line, but that could be that our ley lines aren't quite correct. John, do you remember, did the French make it in one, or have they got more tacks to do?
I think maybe they did have one more tack. I know we got to the top mark, kind of a few lengths in front of them the first time.
That's a little bit surprising, isn't it, that De La Pierre and Odenay tacked where they did? With a boat that's as fast as the Nacra, would it have made more sense for them to make sure they could tack that in one?
Yeah, but as you can see on the tracking there, the angles were so big that day because Geelong was such a shifty venue. If you could sail for probably more than 30 seconds on the bigger shifts, it was worth the extra tack.
Right, okay. Yeah. And the other factor that Nathan Outridge mentioned in our conversation a few weeks ago, looking at one of the other races at Geelong, was the weed. How much was the weed a factor on today in particular, do you remember, Anna?
I think it was actually okay this day compared to some of the days which were really, really bad. I don't think it actually it didn't really influence the medal race from memory. And we probably had it a bit in the fleet racing. It was a good day for Geelong.
Okay. Well, I remember Nathan complimenting you guys on mentally how well you coped with the weed, and it seemed like you just accepted that was part of the game and you weren't letting it get to you. So that was his observation about you, whereas he felt that for others, mentally, they just hadn't got their head around the fact that you had to put up with the weed, and that was part of the game. How much did you discuss that between you and also with your coach, Ian Percy?
I know, well, I think the first race of the event, maybe, or the first race of light winds I remember we did, it really affected us. And we got quite frustrated with it, but then, you know, straight after that race we discussed it, and it was, you know, it's quite clear that it was going to be part of the racing and that everyone was dealing with it, so we just had to deal with it a bit better and accept that everyone was going to be going slow at some point, and just, you know, there's no point getting too stressed about it, just deal with it and crack on.
And deal with it is slow down more often than you would like to, and clear the weed more often than you would like to, probably, rather than grit your teeth and carry on knowing that there's some weed underneath you.
Yeah, no, we did some calcs after the first day, made a couple of phone calls and worked out how much speed we lost and what that equated to in boat length. So then we knew before the top mark, we had to, even if we had to reverse the boat, we had to clean it before trying to foil downwind with weed on the foils.
So tell us about these phone calls. Who is the weed hotline?
Adam made us a weed hotline this time.
Right. So what does Adam? He's a former Olympian himself in the Tornado. You've worked with him along with Ian Percy on the Artemis Challenge for the America's Cup. But so Adam is very technical. He knows his stuff as a sailor, and I'm sure he's very good with the numbers. But specifically, what were you asking him to do?
I just wanted to basically know how long we had to save weed for to lose the distance of taking the weed off, and it was a surprisingly small amount of time downwind.
Right. Okay. And did you get the same calculation for upwind as well?
Yeah, I mean, upwind was a bit easier because for boat speed without it, it's not half as big a loss. So
right,
we did clear it quite a lot upwind, but downwind, you know, the delta was huge between having weed and not having weed. Okay.
And as you later found out with the broken tiller extension, it wasn't so bad with you not trapezing either. There were other ways to get around the racetrack. So sometimes you learn through adversity, I suppose, don't you?
Yeah, I think we're a bit lucky with that. If it wasn't a Rudyard Lake Sailing Club shifty day out there, probably would have been a bit harder in a sea breeze to hike her out.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So you took the opportunities of a Snakes and Ladders day. Snakes and Ladders, viewers are not from Britain, by the way, is a board game that we play called Snakes and Ladders, and I must not use that because it doesn't mean anything to anyone else outside the UK. Now let me just wind back just a little bit. So this is you going into the hoist, and then you've got this fast charging boat behind you. Who's this? And they are, oh yeah, this is the other boat. So this is the French. So they're absolutely on fire. Just give us some observations, John, about the different techniques there and how they've managed to overtake the Italians like that.
Yeah, they've just gone really full noise on the foiling hoist, which when you pull it off is a really slip maneuver. And I think, you know, they're probably in the situation there. They want to get past us, but there's a bit of risk involved as well. It's easy to crash through the bareway, but they did a really nice job of that.
And how do you avoid that crash?
And the helm coming out of a foot loop and moving forwards, which is why it's quite risky. Then if you do stoop, it's quite easy to end up around the front.
Right. Okay. So quite an aggressive, high-risk manoeuvre by the French, which they pull off very, very nicely. And now look at the Spanish. So you see these surges of speed from one boat and then another boat. Anna, you're doing a lot of the hard work here. There we see the Spanish crash down. So much of it, I imagine, but tell me, is down to the movement fore and aft, the gunnel running that the crews like you do. Tell us about the technique and when you know that you've got it right and when you get it wrong and why.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get it wrong, you crash. You know, bury the bows into the water, or you just crash straight down off the foils. So, and you know, when you get it right, the speed difference is huge. And it's all just about moving backwards and forwards really quickly just to control the pitch of the boat. And in flat water like this, and then it, you know, changes even more when there's waves, becomes more about controlling the ride height as much as anything.
So you've got to you've got to work the Jenica, which must be really high load, and at the same time you've got to be light on your feet. The two things must be working in opposition with each other. Is that right? I mean, you're asking the body to do a lot of different things at the same time.
In a way, yeah. But when it's breezy like this, the sheet loads get a bit better because you almost can ease the kite a bit more. In less wind, we've really got the kite strapped on a lot.
Okay.
So yeah, but I mean, it's hard work. It's probably better to be bigger to hang off the kite sheet.
Right. Okay. But anyway, it's going extremely well for you here. It looks like you've moved into the lead here. John, do you remember how you managed to do that?
Yeah, I think we called quite a good ley line, and we'd had quite a nice low mode downwind, so the guys who went beyond us all overstood, and and then at the top I think we basically, the French went high out the top mark, but we did quite a big soak which put us down inside of everyone, so then no one could jibe until the Finlanders couldn't jibe until we jibed. So I think that was where we got round them. Right.
And they had a bit of a sketchy rounding there. I wondered if they were actually going to tip over on their rounding, the Finns. A little bit of a handbrake turn. Now, why did you select this side of the gate and to go left up the second beat?
But just because this was the lifted tack coming out of the Lewis.
And how do you know that? I mean, when the boats are so dynamic downwind, you've got so much on, you've got so much to concentrate on. Are you still thinking in terms of when we round, go rounding on starboard out of that mark is going to be on the lifted tack? You actually know that, do you?
Yeah, well, I just thought when we jibed we hadn't sailed a lot of starboard before we jibed. So then we jibed and there's big letdowns on port, and we sailed on port jibe for quite a long time. So then I thought, right, well, it's, the breeze must be quite far right for us to have sailed so little distance before we made.
And there we got a nice shot of you going upwind. Anna, what are you focused on at this in this kind of breeze, in these conditions?
Just trimming really well to keep the boat speed high. I mean, I wasn't looking around much at what was going on with the other boats. I was really just focused on trimming well, and that was it.
And trimming well, it has to go hand in hand with the steering as well. So how much are you communicating verbally? How much of it is silent these days now that you've done so much sailing together?
In this condition, we're actually quite quiet. Anna does, we split the roles quite heavily in this. So I do the tactics and Anna does all the moding. So I don't really need to think about the steering. I just follow a hull height that Anna's trimming to, Anna trims the speed and I steer to a hull height. So effectively, I'm just following what Anna's doing on the tiller.
Anna, how do you know what speed you're doing? Do you actually have a readout on the boat?
And I would do in training, but not for racing. But I think you just get used to what feels right, and relative to the other boats around you as well. But I think in these kind of boats, you can feel quite quickly when you're a bit too bow down, or really skimming, because it'll start to fall at some point. Or if you feel a bit staggery and slow, it's quite a big difference from being right in the right mode.
And these boats are difficult to get foiling up. When people have been quite critical about the design of the Nacra 17, saying, oh, it could be so much better. But I wonder, does it make it tactically more interesting that the boats are hard to get foiling? So you've got this big gamble to make, that if you bear away and go for the foiling, like we said the French were doing on the first beat, you've sort of got to invest a lot to get something back, and that investment might not work off. John, what do you think about that sort of trade-off? Is that actually quite a fun place for the Nacra 17 to be?
I like it, because if it was just foiling, we'd all just be sailing around foiling. But now it's a mode, and if you're on the lifted tack, it's a really good tool to make to bank the gain. Or if you do it at the wrong moment, you're going to get punished. And I think but I like that about the boat. So 49, you have a bow down mode and a high mode, and in the Nacra you have a VMG mode and a foiling mode.
Now you're coming up towards the top mark, and at the moment you're still in the lead, but the Finns, who had that bad mark rounding behind you, look like they've got a bit back on you. So, John, how do you think they managed to do that?
I think they just pushed a bit further into the corner. I think I came across because we had a reasonable lead, and the French started heading out towards the right.
And it's still not looking too bad. I mean, you're still leading the Finns, so you've given away some of your distance, but still looking pretty comfortable right now. Now, all you could do in this race is win it. That's the best that you can do. But what other thoughts are going through your mind, Anna? Are you thinking about anything other than trimming that mainsail and sailing the boat fast? Are you allowing any thoughts of a world title to creep into your head?
No, not really. Not at that point. And to be honest, I didn't. Well, one, I'm terrible at maths, so it wouldn't have been worth me trying to figure something out whilst we're going along. And also, I mean, going into the race, I think we thought it was. I mean, it was we had to win the race and for Nathan to come last, I think, to win, or to come 9th or 10th. I can't remember. So you know, I wasn't even, terrible at maths, but I didn't realize where they were, or it was more just about making sure that we secured the silver, and because we couldn't do it, you know, we couldn't do anything about Nathan and Haley. So wasn't really thinking about, certainly wasn't thinking about winning at this stage.
Just thinking about hoisting that Jenica right now. So just give us marks out of 10 for that hoist. How was that as a general manoeuvre?
It looks fairly safe, bit pedestrian. I mean, I'm not the best hoister in the fleet, so it was all right.
What are you going to do to become the best hoister in the fleet?
I don't know, probably practice it a bit more. We've got a bit of time to do it on our own at the moment. So.
But you've got a very healthy lead. It's really only the Finns that look like they can take that race win off you right now. Massive gap back to the rest. We've got the Spanish and the Italians and the Danes, and then the other boats that we need to be thinking about from your point of view. We got Waterhouse and Darmanin going around in 7th, and this is who we're looking at. We're on board with now. And then somewhere towards the back are the Outridges, and a bit of a sloppy rounding there. It looks like that's the Kiwis, so not a great rounding by the Kiwis, bringing up the rear. So the final charge down towards the finish. I'm not going to bother forward winding because these runs are ridiculously fast already. Let's hope we start picking up you at the front of the fleet. And looks like there's a lot of sailing to be done on starboard jibe. Is that how you remember it, John?
Yeah, I think it was quite a big left shift at the end of that beat. That's why the finish got a bit closer as well at that last. Okay.
And that's you jibing there. So just getting into your jibe. I don't know if that's going to be your last one or not. Looks like it's a little bit breezier down towards the bottom of the course, but still very manageable. The boats look a lot more manageable than they did a couple of years ago. The rate of learning has just come on immensely, hasn't it, Anna? It looks a safer ride than it used to.
Yeah, it's actually funny. We were watching some videos from our first week in the foiling boat the other day, just found them on the hard drive, and we're so out of control. It was hilarious. We're in stitches, but I couldn't really remember that we sailed them that badly. So it's good to see we've improved.
Well, that is good. And I'm pleased from a safety point of view that that's the case as well, because I was concerned with the level of injury in the Nacra early on, but it seems like, thankfully, that doesn't seem to be happening so often these days. So going through a jibe up onto the foils, how can you do that jibe better, John, just there?
I think we were just jibing through the line, so we're being a bit pedestrian, but basically you just need to go into a jibe with a lot of speed, which gives you glide time.
But it didn't matter because you crossed the line and you won the race. And now, Anna, what are you thinking at this stage? You've got the Jenica down, you can relax a little bit. What are you doing next?
Well, I think we were really happy because we thought we'd got silver, and I still wasn't even thinking about where the Aussies were at this, or where the Outridges were at this point.
Were you even looking back up the track, or were you not that bothered at this stage? You just.
I remember trying to Santa needs to stick this jibe, and then we've got Nathan.
Right. So that's how you were thinking, right?
I don't know. We started that chat and we're like, oh, we definitely got silver, and then we look back and like, oh, Nathan's actually quite far back. And then then we have a discussion. So I think Santi had to do one drive into the finish, and if he beat Nathan, that meant we'd won. And around about that time, we realised that we could.
Right. So so how many minutes afterwards did you know for sure that you were the world champions?
I think one of the media guys came over and told us, but I really couldn't believe it, so it took a while.
Right. And that was the end. I mean, firstly, congratulations again, but that was the end of a long tour down under, wasn't it? You've been away for a long time, up until winning those worlds in Geelong, and you've been working with Ian Percy. So just tell us what it's been like to work with the many-medalled Ian Percy, winner of Olympic golds in the Finn and the Star. What's he brought to your campaign? And John, you tell us, because you've worked with Ian for a long time, and you worked with him in the Star. So just give us a bit of the relationship between you and Ian, how long it's gone on for, and what convinced him to get involved with your campaign this time.
So I first kind of really started properly doing anything with Ian at the end of 2009 in Valencia with the Star boat. And Ed and I started, Greg and I kind of teamed up in the Star and done a year. It had a reasonable year. It's kind of got to the back of the top 10 in a few regattas. And it was pretty obvious Ian was going to go to the Olympics. So we kind of agreed we'd be Ian and Bart's training partner, which was a great opportunity for us up to the Games. And then, they're retiring, and hopefully we'd take the kit on into the 2016 cycle. And, I thought we were doing a reasonable job, but I pretty quickly learned working with Ian and Bart, really we were pretty clueless to what Olympic campaigning really meant, and the level of detail and how hard you need to push and the hours you need to put in to make it really happen. So, Ian and Bart have been a huge turning point for me in my sailing career, to go from, kind of being a young kid with no idea to having more of an idea these days.
And I'm sure that there's far too much for you to go into any detail, but just give us one example of the kind of thing, the work ethic or the attention to detail that has rubbed off on you and you now realise is critical to success in an Olympic campaign.
I just remember the first day we went to train with them down at the Orange Gym base in Valencia. We went out on the Star boat, which was wired up with about 27 sensors, and had the first stage of the V-Boss program running, scanning the sails live. So we probably sailed for 5 or 6 hours, having spent, I don't know, from 7 in the morning till 9 in the gym, and then striped sails all morning, and then gone sailing. And then when we got in, we had, sail makers and data analysts looking at the data straight away, and we'd be there talking about it till 10 o'clock at night, and that just happened day after day after day.
Right. So it is literally hard work. It's one of those secrets that you don't want to hear, because there's no shortcut. It's just hard work.
Yeah, it's the graft.
And I remember doing an interview with Bart Simpson, I think maybe before he got into the Star, when he was still in his Finn days, and maybe he just got into the Star, and they'd done some training with Robert Scheidt, and that was his message. I remember him telling me that the secret of Robert Scheidt is he just works harder than anybody else, and it's amazing and inspiring to hear that. So it looks like you guys have certainly taken that on board. Anna, you also came through a really, really hard trial. Mentally, it must have been very draining to have gone through such a tight trial with you against Ben Saxton and Nikki Boniface. What was that like?
It was really tougher than I ever knew. I think John had a bit of an idea of what that was going to be like, because he'd had such a close trials with Ben Saxton in the previous cycle as well. But for me, it was my first kind of real go at at being selected from Olympic trials. So from the first event of that trials, it was full on, but we enjoyed it as well, and I think it brought both teams on. We both achieved some really good results throughout that year of racing. So yeah, it definitely pushed us, and I'm kind of, in a way, it's been good despite the stress at times.
Well, if Tokyo 2020 was going ahead and you were heading to the games 2 months from now, my picks for the medals would have come out of Great Britain, Italy and Australia. Those to me have been consistently the strongest performing nations, and it strikes me that in each of those nations there has been a hard trial, or there's still a hard trial to come for the Italians. So John, how significant do you think that is? I mean, you may not agree with my picks, but it seems to me that having somebody else of the same nation pushing you at world-class level does seem to raise your game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I agree with Anna's point that the trials, you know, there's no option not to step up. You have to perform on a given day, you know, to qualify. And I think that's what the Olympics is all about. You're turning up on a given week to kind of put it together. And I think having a tight trials really teaches you how to peak, basically.
So you had 2 peaks to achieve it. Well, the most important peak was to win the trials, which you did. And you went to Geelong, Anna, knowing that you'd got the spot for Tokyo. So talking about peaking, how do you get yourself up again for winning a world championship? I could see that, you know, you could have let out a big sigh of relief, and you could have coasted to a 5th or a 6th in Geelong. But actually to win a world title, how did you manage to do that? And how important was it to you mentally that you did manage to achieve it?
I think it was actually, yeah, we were able to finally have a, you know, little breather in ourselves, just, you know, having got the selection. And then it was kind of an exciting time for us that was going to be the first big event that we'd worked with Ian Percy. So we were quite keen as a team actually to push, you know, quite hard at the event. But then knowing that we weren't just also, you know, racing an event while kind of watching one other boat, which is the situation you end up in the end of Olympic trials. So it was a bit of breath of fresh air for us, to be honest, to race kind of a bit more free. And I think, like in New Zealand, we'd been battling it out, knowing that there was a lot at stake in that World Championships, like for the Australians in Geelong. And I think it ends up affecting your racing a bit. So, you know, we pushed hard in January and did a lot of training, and then, you know, came into Geelong, just were able to enjoy the racing, but also, you know, it wasn't really about peaking. It was, but I think just in being able to race a bit more freely, actually, we could, it was, you know, well, it was better for us to be able to race like that.
John, it seems like you've been on a strong upward curve for the last 18 months. Your trip down to Uruguay, I think it was, for big wave training down there with the Uruguayans, and with Santi and Cecilia from Argentina seemed to have raised your game for the 2019 season. But honestly, I know that Olympic sailors are all about control the controllables, and you only deal with what you can deal with. But what was your first reaction when you knew that the Games was going to be pushed back 12 months to July 2021? Were you pleased or were you disappointed?
Well, slightly relieved, to be honest, because I was genuinely worried it was going to get cancelled altogether. So just the fact it was still happening was a big relief. And then the thought of what to do with the extra year, and in a way it's good for us, but like we'll talk about the trials, in a way you're kind of a bit fixed in how you do things when you're doing the trials, because there's not that much time left to develop and, you know, change things in boat handling and settings and stuff, because you're too scared that you'll get slower. So now that we had a number of questions we wanted to answer and bits we wanted to do, and it's given us some time now to actually do those projects before we move back into peaking again.
Okay, and we see a massive rate of gain in the Nacra year on year, because it's still a fairly new class and you're learning so much, probably every month that you're sailing the boat. Anna, how many major championships do you anticipate? I know it's an impossible question to get right, but how many do you anticipate competing in between now and the Games in July 2021?
I think it's unlikely that we'll have any World or European Championships before the Olympics. But I think we'll probably have, well, I'd hope we'd have Palma and here. I mean, maybe 3 big events before the games.
Okay, and maybe some coaches regattas.
Yeah, I'd imagine we'll try and everyone will be really keen to do some kind of organised racing as soon as we're able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, John, what's left on the list? What, now that you've got the extra year, what do you think are going to be the things to work on? I don't know how much you can give away about your program, but
there's some boat handling bits that boat handling I don't think is ever going to win the Olympics for us, but it could definitely lose it if we get that wrong, and we're quite safe. So there's some areas like you saw with the French hoist there we could do better for sure. And then again, we've really focused on Tokyo being wavy, so we haven't invested that much time in the foiling up wind, but for sure it's a mode, and I think we'll put a few more hours into that.
So we're talking at the end of May, beginning of June 2020. How much sailing have you done up till now, Anna, in the last few weeks? How do you see the next couple of months laying out for you?
We were able to start back sailing on the 17th of May here in Weymouth, and we've just been sailing just on our own, so just making a few hours every day, kind of getting back into it. So I mean, we'll try and ramp it up as soon as we can and get training with other boats. And yeah, it's still not that clear when that's going to happen. So, but as soon as we can, we'll be pushing to do something.
And who will that be? Will that be with British teams or with overseas teams?
I think we're keen to keep our training group going with the Argentinians and the Austrians. It's been a really strong group, and I think we're all keep pushing together, and it seems to work well between the 3 of us.
And how have you two become better sailors in the couple of months of lockdown that we've had in the UK? Because I know you guys will have still been eating, drinking and sleeping, sailing, whether you were able to get on the water or not. So Anna, how did you make best use of that time not on the water?
Well, it's kind of a bit obvious, just trying to keep fit. And trying to keep any kind of sailing specific muscles wherever possible whilst not being able to do anything like that. And then just a lot of phone calls to people who know a lot more than us about different parts of sailing in the boat. And then within the British team, we've been talking about, the Tokyo weather and just looking ahead to Tokyo and what it's going to take to win there.
Well, it's going to take some courage, I think. I mean, you can get some big waves there. So I guess you've thrown yourself into that with some of the training that you did down in Uruguay, John. That looks from the outside like a very good move that you made there. Tell us about your reasons for doing that and breaking away from the typical sort of winter training pattern of maybe going to Portugal like most other people did. Yeah,
no, we obviously wanted to sail in a sea breeze, which kind of you're only going to get in the southern hemisphere. And, Santi had done a lot of sailing out of Punta del Este and knew, it was a good place to find the right kind of sea state we're looking for. So we made the call. And also, but the big reason was just the group we had there. It was such a strong group, wherever we would have trained would have been productive with Santi, Cici, Thomas and Barbara.
Right. Obviously worked very well for you. Well, John and Anna, thanks very much for getting on the line with me. Winning the World Championship by a single point from the outrages and on your way to Tokyo 2021. I wish you all the best for the coming year, and I look forward to seeing you again somewhere on the circuit in the real world.
Thank you.
Cheers, Andy.